If you asked a Serb, a Croat, a Bosniak, and a Montenegrin what languages they spoke, they'd probably give you 4 different answers. But put them all into a room together and they can communicate just fine. How? At first, you might think they're just closely related languages, like Spanish and Portuguese, for example. Clearly 2 different languages, but if you know one, you can kind of understand bits and pieces of the other. But that's not really the case with these 4. They're extremely similar. More similar even than most English dialects. You might then argue that these aren't 4 different languages, but 4 different dialects of the same language. And yeah, plenty of people argue that they're actually dialects of Serbo-Croatian, or Serbo-Croat-Bosnian, or Bosnian-Croatian-Serbian, or there's a lot of names. But if they're actually dialects, then why are they so often referred to as languages? Well, the problem is they're not actually dialects or actually languages, because what's the difference between a dialect and a language? Now, I've talked about this many times before, but in short, there isn't one. What we consider a language and what we consider a dialect is often less about grammar and syntax and more about culture and politics. The history of this region is complicated, but these 4 groups have long had distinct ethnic identities, and recently they've received distinct national identities. It's understandable to think they also want distinct linguistic identities. And we could sit here and try to invalidate that, to come up with some schema to divide all languages from dialects, but what good does that do? At the end of the day, calling, for example, Croatian a language or a dialect doesn't change the way Croatian is spoken or written down. All it really changes is your perception of it. Do you view Croatian as a subset of a larger whole, or as an independent identity? And sure, lumping all the varieties together into Serbo-Croatian can be useful sometimes, like in translation work, for example, but should Croatian be considered a language or a dialect? I don't know. Ask a Croat.